different either region or city of Italy. So we visited a few places. Today we're going to visit Naples. And on the map here, you can see Naples is the bigger pink ball down there at the bottom. And then just so you know where I'm coming from, I am just southwest of Florence. And so that's that little dot up there right here. Dink. And this is just so you have some idea of where I'm coming from. This is the Castle of Poppiano. So this is where I live. That's my landlord's house on the right, the castle itself. And I live in this little clump of trees right outside the castle walls in one of the old farmhouses. So here we are. And on the left, you can see my kitchen door. And I'm sitting right in there in my kitchen coming to you from Tuscany. And we are now going to just jump down the peninsula and land in Naples. This is an inset map just showing you the places I'm about to mention. Naples, the city itself, where we're going to spend most of our time. And then Pompeii, Amalfi, and Paestum, and of course Vesuvius. And I chose to put an image of Vesuvius here because Vesuvius just dominates this area in so many ways. And when you live near or on a live volcano, you can't help but be very aware of its presence. So I've put that here because that's kind of how it feels when you're there. It's always looming in the background. So a lot of y'all have perhaps been to this area. Naples is not a heavily visited place really, and a lot of Italians go there, but a lot of foreign visitors don't necessarily go to Naples. Sometimes you fly in there when you're going to the Amalfi Coast. Beautiful Amalfi Coast, lots of people travel there, or to Paestum, the Greek Doric temples, and then the lovely, the fresco of the diver in a Greek tomb. Or of course to Herculaneum and Pompeii and Oplontis. So lots of folks tend to go to those sites, but not everybody chooses to go to the city of Naples. And I'm going to change your mind because we're about to tour around and you're going to see how wonderful it is. This is obviously an overhead view of Naples. And I'm just giving you an idea of what an enormous city this is. We're going to zero in on the historic center of town, which is down here by the monastery of Santa Chiara, which is that big green roof, and that straight long street. That straight long street is called Spacca Napoli, and that's sort of the nickname for the street. It's actually the Roman Decumanus Maximus, because this was the center of the Roman town and is now the center of the current day town of Naples. Spacca Napoli, they call it because spacca literally is kind of a slang word to mean split in half, basically, or just split. You might spaccare a watermelon, for example. Well, this street, Spacca is Napoli, excuse me. So we'll kind of keep that in mind because a lot of the sites we're going to see are right there along that street. Here's another overhead view of Naples. It is such a beautiful city. It has a super long history. It has been continuously settled for 3,000 years. The Greeks were here, it was called Partenope. The Romans were here as Neapolis, and it has just been a cultural center and kind of an intellectual center literally for 3,000 years. So I cannot really scratch the surface of that right now. I want to give you an idea of what this city is like, and then we're going to dive into the historic center and we're going to talk about Caravaggio. That's kind of the point of the discussion here before we make our meatballs. But I do want to give you an idea of what's going on here in this city. So this slide, you can see the overhead picture was taken from the Vomero, which is the beautiful neighborhood up on the hill that you can see on the right. And there's a monastery to San Martino up there. And that's where this picture was taken from. And you can see this lovely boardwalk. You can sit outside and have a pizza seaside. And there's just the layers of history here are just incredible. So after the fall of the Roman Empire, the Normans came in, and after the Normans, the Angevins came in. The Spanish were here for 300 years. Naples was the seat of these various empires. The Holy Roman Empire had a seat here for a while. So there's all kinds of, there's 7 castles here. This is the Maschio Angioino, the Angevin medieval castle, which received its triumphal arch entryway in the 1400s by the super famous sculptor Francesco Laurana. So this is a center of art, center of power, government. Don't forget there's a huge port here. That's the reason this city was settled in the first place. I'm gonna pop back up here. Look at that port. the ancients loved that. So the port has been of humongous influence here, literally for 3,000 years. And there's this influx of people, not only for diplomatic reasons, but also for trade. So you've got all of the seats of empire here. You've got kings, their court, embassies, diplomats. And then on top of that, you've got the offices of every maritime commerce company going, all of these traders, all sorts of people who are coming in from every nation on, the known world basically had a presence here. And it was a huge melting pot. And as I said before, it was a big center of culture and also a big intellectual center. The slide on the right is of one of the oldest universities in the Western world, and it's the Università Federico II, founded in 1224 by Federico II Stupor Mundis. So Federico was an emperor of the Swabian Empire, and he had seats here in Naples and also in Palermo. And he is known for creating these amazing, amazing cultural centers out of these wonderful capitals in the south of Italy. An example of some of the cultural activity here, this is the Royal Theater of San Carlo, founded during the 300 years of Spanish reign, founded in 1730. It's the oldest operating venue in the world. Some of the composers in residence here were Rossini. Yes? Question? Rossini. Come? So Rossini, Verdi, Bellini, Donizetti were all here. Also, to note here in Naples was a huge uprising during the period of the Enlightenment, kind of spurred on by the French Revolution. The Parthenopean Revolution created a kind of a short-lived republic. And hey, Elizabeth Harkey. And it went back under Spanish rule after that point. Napoleon was there, and then the Austrians, it literally changed hands so many times, but the seat of government, like I said, the Holy Roman Empire had its base here at one point. So lots going on, lots of layers of history, and literal layers because Mount Vesuvius erupted continually, and these lava flows covered things up, and so it's just, they've now dug it out, but it's just layer upon layer upon layer. So when you get into the actual city, you end up with scenes like this. So here we are in the Quartiere Spagnoli. So all of these diplomats and intellectuals and merchants, maritime merchants, congregated in communities according to their nation of birth. And this is called the Quartiere Spagnoli, so the Spanish neighborhood, founded at one time by the Spanish community. Today, you can see it's just a mix of all sorts of folks. And the houses are just these apartment buildings, kind of chock-a-block, and people are living in small spaces in kind of tight quarters. And Neapolitans have a very, and again, because it's a port city, they're kind of open-minded and outgoing and fun and accepting, and they're just out there doing everything outside, on the terrace, on the street. They're worshiping outside. They're hanging their laundry outside, obviously. They're buying food. They're hauling their living room furniture outside to just have a relax. So this is still the Quartiere Spagnolo, a market called Pina Secca. Great place, tons, just every foodstuff imaginable. Moving up towards Spaccanapoli, you come through spaces like this. This is called Piazza Dante. And Anne-Marie, this is right by, in this piazza is where I had my little adventure trying to get your documents that we had ordered. Beautiful, beautiful piazza, very lively, lots of restaurants and cafes and bars like Piazza Bellini that you can see on the right. And then, as I was saying before, the Neapolitans, they're just kind of quirky. And in Piazza Dante, I came across this man on the bottom right who is entertaining at lunchtime, basically. And he's singing, and he's got his total setup, and he's on his little motorized cart, and he has a microphone and an amplifier and some background music and his hat on, but no shoes. Because, you know, he figured he didn't need shoes, he's just on his cart, right? Anyway, so that things like that lead one to say that Naples is like the New Orleans of Italy. It's just quirky people, lots of fun, beautiful spaces, amazing food culture. It's just nuts. Into that area where Spaccanapoli is, you really just have tons of contrast. On the left is the Angevin Gothic Church of San Lorenzo, and on the right is one of these little tight alleyways. They're literally around the corner from each other. So you're in this amazing piazza with this just really, really spectacular Gothic church. And in that same piazza is one of the best pastry shops in the whole city. And then you walk around the corner and you're just like in this tight residential neighborhood where folks are basically making tomato sauce on the street. Here's some of the just kind of images of things that you see walking through the center of Naples. I love all of these votive niches. Some of them are to the Madonna and Child, various Madonnas or children, and people have even niches up to their recently deceased relatives. The one here on the bottom is for Maradona, the soccer star. They love to venerate and worship. Right off Spaccanapoli, literally under, let me see if I can find it for you. Under these, this is Spaccanapoli, under these arches right here, just beyond that is the Church of San Lorenzo. And you can see that on the left. The interior is this lovely soaring French Gothic with those springing vaults and the Gothic arches. The entryway is this nice, very kind of perfectly designed Renaissance courtyard. And then you can see right here, there's an entrance to underground, and where you go down a level and you're literally walking the streets of ancient Roman Neapolis. And it is amazing. So this is what the slide you see on the right, this was covered over by an eruption of Vesuvius. And then remember Pompeii and Herculaneum were destroyed by that eruption in 79 AD. That wasn't the only eruption. Vesuvius erupts quite a lot, but in some of those bigger eruptions, the lava flows covered over Naples. So the Roman city exists underground. It's just crazy. And parts of it poke up above ground as well. And so I put in this slide of this opus reticulatum, which is what you see there in the middle on the top register, that kind of honeycomb looking masonry work. That is typical to Roman building techniques from the 1st century BC through the 1st century AD. And you see that actually above ground in Naples. You go into a shop to buy a bottle of limoncello, and that's the wall. They just, current day Naples is built into this stuff. I mean, it's really, really wild. You are literally walking into history. The art available to see in Naples is spectacular as well. We're going to concentrate on Caravaggio, but I just wanted you to get an idea of it. These are some works of art that are in the National Archaeological Museum, which is one of the most spectacular archaeological collections in the country. Works of art from Pompeii on the left, and then these are Roman statues. The one on the right is actually a copy of a Greek original, and the Nike or Nike winged victory, she's missing her wings as well as her head. That may be a copy as well. I'm not actually sure if it's a copy or an original Roman sculpture. It was dug up in the early 1900s. Just somebody was doing road work in Naples. And if you dig in Naples, you're going to hit something like that. It's just amazing. The paintings gallery is called the Capo Di Monte, and it's in a royal palace, which you see down here on the right. That was built in the 1740s, and it actually became a museum 30 years later in the 1770s. A museum there was opened up within the royal palace. So the art collections here are spectacularly rich. If you think about the kings and diplomats and wealthy people who came through here, they're just an embarrassment of riches with the art collections. And here I just grabbed a handful of photographs of what's available to see in the Capo Di Monte. And there's Mantegna, Botticelli, Raffaello, and Titian. Amazing. And then also, of course, Caravaggio, who we're about to talk about right now. Caravaggio painted, we're going to talk about 3 paintings that are in Naples that Caravaggio actually painted in Naples. This is the first one, but let's take a quick look at Caravaggio. He was born in Milan. His name was Michelangelo Merisi, and his family was from the town called Caravaggio, where he lived when he was a kid. So that's how he got the nickname Caravaggio. On the left, you see a portrait done by a fellow artist. And then on the right is Caravaggio's self-portrait as the head of Medusa, but not only the head of Medusa, the decapitated head of Medusa. So Caravaggio had some inner turmoil, and he was also kind of a particular figure in that he really kind of hung out in kind of the seedy underworld. He had friends who were really on the very margins of society. The people he used as models came from that type of lifestyle. I can just imagine him hanging out in the taverns in those little alleyways in Naples. But he also was completely at home with wealthy art patrons who really liked his company. He obviously had a lot to give, and he's an incredible artist. So they commissioned works of art for him and also protected him when he needed it. So as a very young artist, he was precocious and incredibly talented, and he went to Rome. And at age 20, he landed in Rome. And over the next 15 years, he developed his personal style, which is extremely particular, and became famous as a young artist. And other artists in Europe actually came to Rome to see what he was doing. His fame was sort of spread far and wide. He was a proponent of the Baroque style. So that follows mannerism. We talked about mannerism a month ago. If you were here, you'll remember our talk about Pontormo. This is Pontormo's Visitation. The goal here in mannerism was to convey emotion and bend reality to suit your needs while you're doing it. So there are a lot of things about this composition that aren't necessarily realistic, but that wasn't the point. Caravaggio was going for extreme realism, but not giving up on the emotion at all. So again, those characters are some of these kind of just tough construction worker types that he was probably drinking a glass of wine with at the tavern, and he had them pose for him. And he has, again, gone for total realism, but he's gone for super sort of heavy drama as well. So he's constructed these scenes in such a way that the backgrounds are really neutral. The only thing in the background here is the column that Christ is being lashed to. This is the flagellation of Christ. So the sort of servants of Pontius Pilate are lashing Christ to this column so that he can be whipped before crucifixion. Another hallmark of Baroque then is these solid compositions that use a lot of diagonals, both the limbs of the figures and also the drapery to kind of draw your eye in where it needs to go, and then which is the center of the picture, which is Christ. And then this use of light and shade is a hallmark of Caravaggio's style. So the idea of manipulating light and shade is not new. Look, Pontormo did that here. Pontormo has Mary's face totally in shadow and has spotlit the back of her neck. So he's using light and shadow to really kind of convey Mary's humility and vulnerability. He's also using subtle light and shade to model the drapery or model the faces of the characters. Caravaggio's done all that, and then he has taken it way further and just gone for straight theatrical use of light and shade here. And he is creating a lot of drama with his use of light and shade, chiaroscuro. This was so influential that it started an entire school of painting. So by the time Caravaggio painted this, it's 1607. He had been in Rome. He was involved in a duel, and he won the duel, but that means he killed this person, and so he had a murder charge on him. And so he escaped to Naples, where he had a commission waiting. So he had work waiting for him, and that was to paint this painting, which was done for the church of San Domenico Maggiore, which was that lovely Gothic cathedral in the piazza with the pastry shop. That's where this goes. So he comes down. He's, his patrons are kind of helping him out. They get him out of Rome. They get him to Naples, where he has work, and he paints this flagellation of Christ. So, but we're going to talk about two more Caravaggios, but just to show you the influence of Caravaggio, here are three works of art painted much later that clearly were heavily influenced by this style of Caravaggio. They call it Caravaggismo. And remember, Caravaggio was an extremely young artist when he was in Rome. He unfortunately died at age 38, and he left behind a legacy that really left its mark on Western art. On the left is Artemisia Gentileschi with this wonderful Caravaggism, even the scene that she's chosen here, the beheading of Judith beheading Holofernes. Her father studied with Caravaggio in Rome, and then she learned from him. In the middle is Giuseppe de Ribera, the Spanish painter. He's painting in the mid-1600s. He was in Rome in the years just after Caravaggio's death and learned this style and then propagated it. And on the right is Georges de la Tour. He is a French painter. He was working in the mid-1600s as well, and he clearly has taken on the chiaroscuro and the single light source and run with it. What's interesting to me is that he learned about this style from a group of Caravaggisti in Utrecht in the Netherlands. So here is this street character, Caravaggio, who can't stay out of trouble and you have to flee Rome to go to Naples, but and dies at age 38. And he's just, his fame and his personal style influenced so many artists for generations and generations afterwards. Another painting he painted in Naples is in this church called Monte della Misrecordia, and it's also right off Spaccanapoli. So you come off of that just kind of chaotic street, the arches, you walk into a courtyard, and then you go into this lovely Baroque church in the round, and the altarpiece straight ahead of you is called the Seven Acts of Mercy, which was commissioned from Caravaggio. And this was kind of a hard painting to paint. He had to include all 7 acts of mercy, the Madonna and Child of the Madonna of Mercy, and it had to go in that really tall, skinny canvas, which was not an easy feat. So Caravaggio, again, kind of set up a stage set here. The angles go back into space, and he's got this tight little kind of alleyway, very Neapolitan. And he has included all of these figures who are depicting the 7 acts of mercy, which are clothe the naked. There's St. Martin in the front sharing his cloak, shelter the homeless, visit the sick, visit the imprisoned, bury the dead, give water to the thirsty, and feed the hungry, which is Pero and Simon, which you see on the right. That comes from most of these scenes come from, I think, the book of Matthew. The scene of Pero and Simon comes from a Roman legend, and it was used famously much later by John Steinbeck as the last scene of the Grapes of Wrath, if you all remember that. A couple little close-up images here. Lost in the shadows are the sick person down here. Can you all see? Lorenzo, si vede il mio cursor? Lorenzo?
Sì, Elaine.
Okay, grazie. There's a sick person down here in the corner. Here you can see an innkeeper who's taking in the homeless. He's taking in a traveling pilgrim who's actually Christ disguised as a pilgrim. You see Samson here is drinking. And then in this image, the guy who's holding the torch is helping somebody bury a dead body. So those are our acts of mercy. My favorite part of this whole painting is those angels. So there's the lovely Madonna and Child, very serene looking. She's kind of looking down over this very chaotic scene. And these 2 angels are just such Caravaggesque figures. I love them. They look like they're motorcycle mechanics. Maybe of ambiguous sexuality, with those floppy curls. They're kind of hugging each other softly, and they're just like tumbling down out of heaven into this crazy scene in this Neapolitan alleyway. So beautiful, and so Caravaggio. Caravaggio's last painting that he painted in Naples, and actually the last painting of his life, is the Martyrdom of Saint Ursula. And it's in a private collection in Naples, which is a bank. And you can get in to see it. You have to go into this bank on Via Toledo, and you can tell them you want to go up and see the Caravaggio, and up you go. So here is Saint Ursula. She's a virgin martyr. She's just been shot with the arrow of Attila the Hun. So this is Attila dressed in 17th century dress in his Huns. And Attila, you can see his hand over here on the left, has literally just let that arrow go, and it has just pierced the heart of the Saint Ursula. And she's looking down, and she's a little bit surprised, but she's also kind of calm, kind of like Christ on the column that we just saw. She sort of knew what her destiny was, and she's accepting it. It's not fun, but she's accepting it because it's her duty. So look at the faces here. The composition is typical Caravaggio. Look at the faces here. Attila has just let that arrow fly, and he already regrets it. He is not happy. He's not triumphant at all. The Huns that are with him on either side of Ursula are shocked as well. One looks at the bow, the other is looking down at the arrow itself, as is Ursula. And then the man behind Ursula, whose face is actually lit up, is a self-portrait of Caravaggio. And he is in despair here. And Caravaggio, at this moment in his life, and I'm not sure what happened during the painting, during the work on this painting, what happened after, but Caravaggio was involved in a knife fight while he was in Naples. He's painting this painting. He learned that he'd been forgiven of the murder charge in Rome, and so he packs all his belongings up and gets on a boat to go back to Rome. So he's going to take a boat up. He lands in Tuscany at Porto Ercole, and he's going to go back to Rome to just kind of get back to where he was before all of this kind of dark period started. He lands on the beach in Tuscany. He has this knife wound. He's ill. He was arrested mistakenly, of all things. At this moment, he was arrested by accident. They let him out of prison 2 days later. He went to the beach to recover his belongings, and he was sick, and he died right there on the beach and never made it back to get his pardon to Rome, age 38. Really a tragedy, but we're lucky that he left so many works of art for us to enjoy. So let's jump back into Naples. And now that you've seen all these paintings of Caravaggio, you can kind of imagine him running around here, going into these taverns and taking part in Neapolitan life. So this is Spacca Napoli, and literally just some scenes that you see when you're walking through Spacca Napoli. A fish market, street art, and an actual 2,000-year-old Roman sculpture allegory of the Nile River. Again, people just out shopping. A great thing about the center of Naples is that it's full of Neapolitans. You go to the center of Rome sometimes. I was talking with Lorenzo about this the other day. Lorenzo says he never goes to have a cup of coffee in the center of Florence. The center of Florence is not, it's kind of priced out basically, unfortunately. And the people who are in the center of Florence, not now, but it's usually tourists. Now it's Florentines, because unfortunately, there's no traveling. One day we'll be back. And the center of Venice is the same way. You rarely run into Venetians when you're in the center of Venice. If you're in Naples, you are with the Neapolitans. And you take 2 steps off the main drag and you're seeing things like the man down here on the right, who is, I love the way he's got this votive niche of Jesus, which is behind the shutter, and he's keeping it clean. There's a ton of civic pride. And that has been instilled recently by Luigi De Magistris, who is the mayor down there. And he's actually really managed to reduce petty crime to amazingly low levels. Naples has had kind of a bad reputation in the past for petty crime, no longer, because wonderful Luigi De Magistris has been able to really instill a sense of civic pride. On the right, I didn't know where to put this. That is an image of San Gennaro. I had to have him in here. San Gennaro is the patron saint of Naples, and he is venerated like no other saint is venerated. So I just wanted to put him in here. He's also venerated in New York. I'm sure a lot of y'all have seen the San Gennaro Festival in Little Italy. So again, just moving through the center of the historic center. These are recent pictures, and recent as in taken during the lockdown. One of them says, let's continue the tradition of the caffè sospeso, or suspended coffee. There's a tradition in Naples, and I recommended this documentary in the reminder email that you all got. There is a tradition in Naples about when you go get a coffee, you have your coffee, but then you pay for 2, so you're paying forward. So somebody who comes in who would like a coffee and can't afford it, you've covered that. So it's very nice. Everybody knows in Naples they can have a coffee. And then this is a great thing that came out during the pandemic. The baskets you see hanging on the left, Neapolitans who live in these tall apartment buildings lower the basket down in order to take the trash out, bring the bread up, bring the groceries up, get the mail, whatever. In this case, the sign says, chi può metta, chi non può prenda, which is who's able to contribute, put something in the basket, but if you need something, take it. Amazing generosity and just feeling of community spirit in Naples. It's really, really nice. Here's Spacca Napoli again, people eating. The food culture here is as important as everything else we just talked about. And we're gonna, again, scratching the surface here. I could talk to you for a week about this. Better yet, y'all come over and we'll just eat our way through Naples, because there is a lot to taste. They invented pizza in 1889, so there's that. Here are some different versions of street food. Naples is great for street food. And I love, there's the pizze fritte. You can see the little lady down here at the bottom, Signora Fernanda, is making pizza fritte, which is exactly what Sophia Loren was doing. And I think that's Loro di Napoli, 1962, Vittorio De Sica. Some of the pastries. I know people who get on the train and go to Naples just to eat a baba, or just to eat a sfogliatelle, or at Easter people go down to get pastiere, and then my personal favorite on the right, casatiello, which is a savory bread with salami, cheese, and egg, hard-boiled eggs in it. Amazing. And then just the regular food that you actually eat. there's too much. I just can't even talk about it. There are an array of vegetables, all the different preparations, just amazing. Of course, we're going to talk about meatballs, and we're about to go make meatballs. So here's the list of ingredients that we're going to use. That's the cut of beef that I'm using. It's called the scoperchiatura di bistecca. And it's kind of that fascia that's right on top of the steak. And you can use whatever cut, but my butcher picked that out for me because he likes to use that for ground meat because it actually the muscle fibers are kind of longer. And so it's more tender when it's ground and it has a good piece of fat on it. And then my butcher, I told him when I was doing, he's like, oh, you need some more fat. So he, of course, added some more fat. But you can also use a mix of pork or beef or whatever. But just so you see that we're going to do this with beef. Okay, I'm going to go over to where we're going to cook. Let's see.
Perfetto.
Cosa?
Ok.
Va bene così? Un pochino più alto.
Sì, ma non troppo.
Va bene così. Can y'all see me?
Okay.
So we're going to make meatballs, and we're going to make one impasto base, and we're going to make 3 different kinds of meatballs. One of them is going to be in sauce. So, like you see in the picture, a very just easy red sauce. And you saw those ladies, they pulled their living room furniture out on the street. These people are not fussy. They're not fussy, prissy chefs. They're making some red sauce. I have some onions in here. I just cut up half of a red onion and tomato passata. This is just tomato puree. Those ladies may have made their own puree, probably right there on the street, one of those big cauldrons that they haul out. And I actually made some last year, but I'm out. So instead of being picky about it and fussy, I just bought some puree. So we're going all Naples today. So puree, onions that have been browned in olive oil. And I'm just putting in enough water that I can recover all of the tomato that's left in the jar. So I'm going to put this on the stove, and then we're going to get going with actually making the meatball mixture. Okay. So the main ingredients here that are kind of necessary are meat, cheese, garlic, parsley, and bread. And bread, to me, is the secret ingredient. The only reason I even decided to try and make meatballs, I did this over lockdown, is because Neapolitan meatballs are the softest, luscious, just so yummy. And I wanted to know what was going on there. So it's the bread. So the ingredients then that we start with that are kind of basic are garlic, parsley, cheese, bread, and then you can add whatever flavorings you want. And you can add like pine nuts and raisins. You can add nutmeg. I'm going to add capers and a little bit of lemon zest. So capers, salt cured capers, and I've already chopped them up. So I'm just going to add them here. Fresh flat leaf parsley. I think y'all can all find this by now. This used to be kind of a, you know, kind of hard to find, but this is the kind of parsley you want to get. And I've already chopped that up too. And then garlic, and you want to kind of mince the garlic, but I like to make a paste out of it because if you make a paste out of it, it just the flavor tends to really meld better, and just you get a nice garlic flavor without actually biting into a piece of garlic. And so the way to do that, you can use a mortar and pestle. My mortar and pestle is busy because my pepper grinder broke, so I've been using it for pepper. But another way to do it is just to use your knife blade and some really coarse salt. So the salt actually brings out some of the liquid of the garlic, which actually again helps that flavor spread around, and it also helps kind of crush it. So just crush the garlic under your blade. And you see how it's kind of turning into a paste? It's already getting kind of liquidy. And then I'm help it along a little bit. we're trying to get a lot of flavor with nothing being overwhelming. So this way, the garlic is not overwhelming. And the cheese I used is also not overwhelming because I've used a mixture of Romano cheese and Parmigiano Reggiano. So I think the Neapolitans would probably use Provolone del Monaco, and we're going to make a Sicilian version as well. They would probably use Caciocavallo. I'm using what I can get, which is Pecorino Romano and Parmigiano, and I'm mixing it because the Pecorino is nice and strong, but if I used all Pecorino, it'd be too much. So I'm using a little bit of Parmigiano as well, grated. So the Parmigiano kind of tames that Pecorino a little bit. And then the secret ingredient is bread. So this is old stale bread, and it needs to be soaked, and just like it's going to be soaked, and we're going to just crumble it. And so the way to do that is add liquid, and you can add water, you can add milk, or you can add wine. So I'm using white wine just to kind of give another layer of flavor. And you don't really want it to be wet necessarily. Just soak the bread. If there are any bits of crust, discard them. I have bits of crust. I cut most of the crust off, but this obviously, that's not soaking, so I'm getting rid of it. I'm just squeezing some of that wine out, and then you just crumble it into the bowl. This is crust also. So the flavors here are nothing too unusual, but it's just a nice way to get them to come together. And it's kind of fun to eat. So you'll have noticed that we're going to just serve them in red sauce on a plate, which is how they serve it in southern Italy. In the United States, we have that tradition of putting the meatballs on top of spaghetti. That's a wholly American thing. And they just don't do that here, because of course you eat your spaghetti before you eat your first course is your spaghetti or your pasta, and then you eat your second course, which is the meat after that. So they just think it's totally bizarre that you would serve the meat on top of the pasta. We're also going to make a Calabrian version though, which are these kind of smaller ones that have been fried, and they're just like, it's like eating popcorn. You just can't quit. Really, really good. And then, like I said before, we're going to make a Sicilian version, and that's kind of a surprise. Okay, so that's as much bread as I can get off of here. These are kind of crusty bits. Just want to make sure they're in little tiny pieces. So I'm just going to mix all this up with my hands. Actually, I want to put in some salt and pepper too. There's a little bit of salt that was already in here with, this is just black pepper. There's salt that was with the capers. You can see I have salt packed capers. Can y'all see in there? So some, I don't rinse them. I just kind of brush some of the salt off, but some of the salt makes it into the recipe, which is fine, but take that into consideration when you're adding salt. And then both of the cheeses, the pecorino in particular, are quite salty. So take that into consideration as well. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of extra salt. So I'm going to mix this up well, and then I'm going to add an egg. You want to do a beaten egg, so I am going to beat it up real quick. And then mix all that together. You can always add an extra egg if you need to see how it comes together. You want a nice, soft mixture that holds together. So see how quick that is? Okay, so let's form the meatballs. I'm going to show you how to make, let's see, first we're going to make let's make the Sicilian one first. Actually, yeah, let's make the Sicilian one first. So the Sicilian one is going to be grilled. And it's kind of a medium-sized meatball. And I'm going to make it kind of oblong shaped. And then the way they do it is they pin it between 2 lemon leaves with toothpicks. And then just like that, you can put that on the grill. And the lemon leaves actually infuse the meatball with, can y'all see that? The lemon leaves infuse the meatball with some citrus aroma. So, so good. Put that there. Then we're going to make the Neapolitan version. Let's add, so the ones that are not going in the lemon leaves, I'm going to actually add some lemon zest because I think that flavor is just great. So I'm not going to add a lot. I just want a little hint.
Elaine?
Yeah.
What about the capers?
I put them in before I had already chopped them up.
Oh, yeah, okay.
For show.
Yeah, gotcha.
This is the Galloping Gourmet's show version of capers. So I'm just going to knead in a little bit of lemon zest, so these will have a little bit of citra aroma as well. And then, so the Neapolitan meatballs, they're quite large. So they're really big, see? And I'm just rolling through flour. Let's see, I'll make 2 of those, and then we'll make a couple of the Calabrian versions too.
Is there any caution about overworking that meat to make them tough?
I don't think so, because it's the bread that's making it so soft. Although the thing is, it's also how long you cook them, so don't overcook them. And frankly, the Neapolitan ones that get cooked in the sauce, these big, huge ones that actually get braised in the red sauce, are usually just really, really, really tender. And then the smaller Calabrian versions, they're just a little tougher because they just get cooked more. They're really tiny, and so and they get kind of fried in olive oil, pan fried. So they're a little bit less tender, but it's more the cooking than anything else.
Elaine,
Question:
are they are all areas where they do the meatballs, they roll them in flour?
No, and there's an interesting thing about meatballs, which is that I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to tell you about the meatballs. The little Calabrian versions get rolled in flour. They get passed in egg and then rolled in breadcrumbs. So that's what I'm about to do. So the meatballs, in Italian cookbooks, the meatball idea exists from Roman days. The word polpetta, which is the Italian word for meatball, was first mentioned in the Maestro Martino wrote in the 1400s. So think about it. Before Christopher Columbus discovered America, Maestro Martino was writing about meatballs, polpette. And then Pellegrino Artusi, who's kind of a famous cookbook author, he wrote a book called La Scienza della Cucina e l'arte di mangiar bene, or qualcosa del genere. Lorenzo's holding up a copy of that right there. He actually wrote a recipe in 1881, I think it is, for meatballs. So we're making 3 different versions of Southern meatballs here today. The Pellegrino Artusi version is different. And so I'm using raw meat, and I am passing them through flour. And actually the Neapolitans would deep fry these. I'm not going to do that because there's just really not any need for that. And I'm going to use olive oil and just a small pan. And you'll see I'll add more olive oil as I need it, but I'm not going to do the deep frying. Feel free, but you don't have to do that. So the Southern versions have the flour, but the Artusi version actually, A, does not have flour, I don't think, and B, doesn't use raw meat, it uses leftover boiled meat. And they mix boiled meat with some spices and some potatoes. And I've done that exactly once in my life, and it was with Lorenzo, who's here with us. And it's his grandmother's recipe, Giusto Lorenzo.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna wash my hands.
Yeah, it's my granny recipe. I start cooking with the polpette, and the difference is that in Tuscany we start with the boiled meat that we made for the Christmas time or other Easter time, and the advance we cut and we mix with boiled meat, potatoes and parsley, garlic, and the bread is not wet in the wine, but in the milk, and then we make this kind of polpette, and we fry it after putting eggs and crumbled bread. So it's a very, for me, is the recipe from my granny, and I love with that. So it's very it's a recipe. Yeah, it's a recipe that is not good only for the taste.
That's an Italian for you.
For the heart.
Yeah.
Right.
And also
Good for
because
the
she was wonderful. This is my granny.
Oh, she's beautiful.
He brought a picture of his grandma.
Beautiful.
Very elegante.
Like me. No.
Right. He can cook, but he's not elegant. Sorry. Heating up some olive oil, and then I am going to brown the two big Neapolitan ones before adding them to the sauce. Let's take a look at the sauce. So the sauce needs some salt, first of all. Have y'all noticed my lovely Viking range that I'm cooking on? Thank you, Viking Range Corporation.
Lane,
Uh-huh.
is that like a tomato gravy, or, you know, because I've noticed that different term, what we call tomato sauce, and some people here who have Italian roots call it tomato gravy. Is there a difference?
Well, this is a super, super simple sauce. And in my family, when we make red sauce, we don't call it gravy. I don't know why. I know a lot of people in Mississippi and Louisiana down where like a lot of Sicilian families settled. I know they call it gravy. We always called it red sauce or spaghetti sauce, even though you don't have to eat it on spaghetti. But that usually has a lot more spices in it and is a little bit more involved in a super long cooked sauce. This is the non-fussy Neapolitan version of, we got to cook these meatballs in something, so just open up that jar and pour it in. There's nothing in there but salt, olive oil, and onions. And when I add the meatballs, I'm going to add some sweet basil, and that's it. So it's kind of very different from anything. I've never seen this kind of thing in the Italian American community in the South US. If anybody has seen it, let me know. So these just really need to get browned, and they're actually going to cook in the sauce. So I'm just going to brown on the edges, and I'm going to go ahead and add these. And these are going to get cooked through in the olive oil. So can y'all see down in here? I mean, I'm not deep frying, although you could do that, but I have a nice amount of olive oil. You know, it comes a little way up the side. And if I'm doing batches of these, I tend to use a small pan, just so I, you know, use less oil basically, but I keep adding oil as I go along because they kind of drink it.
The breadcrumbs, were they fine in texture or a little coarse?
I'll show you. They're actually kind of a mix. I bought them from the baker. So the baker takes his old bread and grinds it, and there are bits of big things in here. It's mostly quite fine, but then some of the crust has little bits. And so there's some, like, look, there's a chunk.
Yeah, so it's almost like a cross between traditional breadcrumb and panko, maybe a mixture of.
Yeah, I've never really used panko, but yeah, that's kind of what it looks like.
Yeah.
Like a mixture.
Lane,
Uh-huh.
so this looks so delicious, I want to make this right away, but I do not possess stale bread, and I'd rather not wait 4 or 5 days. Any substitutions you could recommend?
You can put it in the oven and just dry it out a little bit. Or if you think about it ahead of time, just cut a few slices at lunch and let it sit there until you're ready to make them for supper. That's what I did.
Oh, so just a few hours.
A few hours is probably good. Or it, literally, you could put it in the oven just on a very, very low temperature, and it would dry out. Just take some of that humidity out. Or you could also, and I've read this, I've never done it, but if you have just white bread in the house, like what we call, just sandwich bread, you can just use that with no soaking necessary, right? Just tear it up into bits.
Elaine, this is Jackie. Are you particular about your olive oil?
I'm extremely particular about my olive oil, now that you asked. Thank you.
That was a loaded question.
I am extremely particular about my olive oil, and we did a whole olive oil session 2 weeks ago. For those of y'all who participated, I'm just going to show you how picky I am about my olive oil. Okay, this is what I choose from when I start cooking. Can you see it?
Yes.
But I'm literally frying, and so what I'm using is Savona Late Harvest 2018. This is a really good, clean, organic, extra virgin olive oil, but it doesn't have a lot of strong aromas. It's also 2 years old, and it was from a later harvest, so it wasn't real spicy to begin with. It was more of a delicate oil, and I've had it in the cantina for 2 years. So now I'm using it to cook with. And I bought it, you can see I bought it, I think I must have bought 5 liters of it, and I bottled it myself. There's no label or anything. So the big ones, see how they're nice and golden? Isn't that beautiful? The big ones can go into the sauce. You want to make sure every side has had some time on the heat. So the sauce needs to boil and then set it on simmer. I'm going to just add the parsley. And then...
Basil or parsley?
Oh, did I say parsley? Sweet basil. Thank you, Lorenzo.
You're welcome.
Lorenzo is paying attention, thankfully. So one more of these. So these are not done. They're going to cook in the sauce. So they're going to cook for about 30 minutes in the sauce. It's getting a little hot, turning it down. So I'm going to just turn them over, make sure the basil's under there. I've turned the sauce down to simmer. I'm going to flip these around a little bit. So they just need to simmer for half an hour. And they'll cook through. And then these basically are done. So my friends, my neighbor's mom used to make these all the time. My friend Rita's mother. So every time she came to visit, she would bring a big pack of all kinds of food, and she would have these in there as well. She made rice balls and meatballs. So there you go. This can be kind of served with a salad as a second course like the other ones. Or I'm going to add some salt because you can't not put salt on top of fried stuff. Or like an appetizer, just kind of finger food. So these are our 3 versions. And you're going to cook them for 30 minutes and then turn them every now and again. And I'm going to take them out of here just to show you, kind of plate them for you so you can see what it looks like when you serve them. But they're not quite ready, so I'm not going to cut them open because they're definitely not cooked. See.
And Elaine, can I mention the meatballs will flavor the sauce?
And the meatballs will flavor the sauce. Yes, thank you. I was going to say that. So as this cooks for 30 minutes, the meat is going to cook and let some of its juices out, and all of those yummy flavors in the meat itself will kind of leak into the sauce. And so that real simple sauce has a super fresh tomato flavor, but it's also got a lot more flavor than you might think because the meat really gives off a lot. So this is literally how this is served in Naples and Campania. And if you want to make have a pasta course first, then you would sauce your pasta with that, and then you'd serve this as a second course. So there are your 3 versions of meatballs.
The ones in the lemon leaf would be put on a grill.
Yes, that gets grilled, and I don't have any coals going right now, but yeah, you would just put this on a grill.
Sort of how many minutes maybe, and you flip them once?
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see when they start to get cooked up to about here, you can flip it. You'll kind of, you can literally follow the cooking process as it pierces the interior.
And lemon leaves, I'm not sure are easily available where I am. Skip it, put in the zest instead, or wrap in something else?
You can try fig leaves. And I don't know if you have figs where you're far north. You may not have figs either. What edible leaves do you have? Chestnut? You can try chestnut leaves.
I have no idea. I'd have to go look.
I think you should.
All right. So it benefits from some sort of covering like that. Don't put it on the grill like a burger.
Well, you could also put it on the grill like a burger. I mean, I don't know. I haven't grilled a burger in so long. Not that I wouldn't like to. That sounds really good. But wouldn't you maybe put some oil on the outside or something so that it wouldn't just stick? Or you probably have some kind of professional grill with like a non-stick thing on it or whatever. See, I grill over there on the fireplace, so I don't have all those little accoutrements. But yeah, anyway, you can if you can grill a hamburger, you can grill a meatball too.
Elaine?
I think you should cross-cultural show of grilling burgers on the fireplace as one of your next episodes.
That'll be the next one.
Elaine, there's an interesting question.
Okay.
Someone asked is it important to leave the leaves in the water before grilling or not?
Oh, allora, no. Lemon leaves are really kind of dense with water, so they don't just crumble up. I've cooked with fig leaves before. You might want to keep them damp. And then chestnut leaves get real crispy real fast. I've cooked with them before too. So yeah, you might want to try to keep an eye on that with the chestnut leaves. But no, lemon leaves, no, they're pretty robust. They can take it. Any other questions?
Are you going to circulate a copy of the recipe with quantities?
I am. That will be coming tomorrow. Okay. You will be getting a copy. And then everybody has to send me a picture of what they made or post it and tag me on Instagram or something, okay? Y'all, thanks so much for tuning in.
Elaine, that was just beef. Do you ever?
I just use beef. You can use a mixture of beef and pork, and that maybe how to get some fat in there.
Yeah.
You can use a shoulder cut of pork, half beef. I don't know. I just kind of like this with just. I kind of enjoy it with just all beef and the capers. For some reason, those two things go really well to me.
Yeah.
But yeah,
some veal maybe.
You could do, but that's not really necessary. I mean, I got vitellone, which is vitello, not vitella. So kind of a young animal, but it's not a calf and it's not an adult either, kind of in the middle. But I can go to a butcher that I can ask that and they give it to me. So if I were you, I would just literally go to the store and get some not lean ground beef.
Yeah, okay.
Or lean ground beef and pork shoulder ground.
Elaine,
Lardo.
do you eat the lemon leaves for those, with the ones that you?
No, I do not eat the lemon leaves. These are really robust, hardy leaves. I don't think you want to munch on them. I've never tried. I don't think it would chew.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Okay, thanks.
Sure.
So Elaine, do you sprinkle any Parmesan or anything? Is that sinful on top of any of the dishes?
No.
No. Okay.
It's in there. Although if you were going to have red sauce on pasta, yeah, you'd put cheese on top. But
Gotcha.
if you're eating meat, no, because it's already got the cheese in there.
Gotcha.
What about a little sprinkling of hot pepper? That's what I would do personally. But
I would say that's another thing. I mean, the flavorings in the meat itself do anything you want. Take out the black pepper and put in red pepper, for example. That's another option you could do. For sure. And whatever you have in the house. And that's another thing. You don't have to, this is, like I said, this is not fussy cooking. So whatever you happen to have is what you can use. You don't have to work too hard to find any specific ingredient.
Very good.
Thanks, y'all. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll
was
be
real-
in touch with recipes. Y'all can write if you have any questions, and don't forget to send me a picture of the fruit of your efforts after you've made them.
And I will.
Wonderful,
Okay.
Elaine. Thank
Video.
you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
y'all. Thanks.
Thank you. Ciao.
Bye. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Loved it. Thanks, Elaine.
Thanks.
Ciao,
you.
Elaine.
People on there.
Bye.
Yeah.
Ciao.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You still got some.
Hey,
Thank you, Elaine.
hey, Jean.
I want to know if Don Roberts, is that a real backdrop or a fake backdrop?
That's a picture from our hotel when we went to Sorrento.
Oh, awesome.
That's-
Good for you.
Oh, wow.
Zoom back.
Right now.
I want to go. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Hey, Elizabeth and Scotto.
Bye.
Hey, Lisa Miriam. Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
You gonna make meatballs? Remember the time the first
When
time
can we come?
reverb. What is that? Lorenzo,
Where is that?
oh, goodness. There we go. Can we try that? Lisa, try talking again.
I'm scared.
There we
Is
go.
that better?
It's so quiet.
What I was saying before we got reverbed out. Remember we made gnocchi?
It's like Tom
They
Waits.
were horrible. You remember that?
Yes, it was so good. I still make it.
Well, no, the first time we did it, they were like little lead pellets, as I recall, weren't they?
Oh, was it a fail? Oh no. I hadn't done it in a while, and then we made some last month, and yeah, it took 2 tries to get
they're
it.
really good, and they're really, you can keep in the freezer and totally versatile. Yeah, maybe I'll do that for my next lesson.
Oh yeah. Okay. So my question is, when can we come?
We're still having.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. I mean, as soon as you can, but yeah, I don't know when that's going to be. Don't know. So we'll see. I don't know.
I'd rather be in quarantine in Tuscany than here.
Me too. Me too.
Hey, our quarantine, I mean, because I live here in the country, my quarantine, I mean, obviously it was an adjustment, but it could have been worse. So, and I was talking to some friends today, and we just literally, it was like time was suspended, and we were just able to kind of like put our brain on pause and recharge. And I mean, you know, it was anxiety producing just looking at the newspaper, but
yeah.
Also just because I have so much green space outside, it was doable, and kind of we did get a good recharge. So it was nice for that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was successful as well. You know, it produced good results. So
made me miss your kitchen.
Oh yeah.
Your kitchen and dining room. Love that.
Mary Pryor and Joe have been here to cook a couple times. So yeah, it's fun. So I teach cooking classes here in this space. So whenever y'all can travel, I would love to have y'all here.
Look, by the way, Elaine, the Naples thing was great. You know, remember that our trip 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We told you, knowing us, what would you pick? It was an off the beaten path, and Naples was absolutely one of our favorites.
Isn't that great?
So
That's great.
Yeah, I'd go back there again.
It is so fun, and there's so much to see. And like I said, 3,000 years of, you know, it's been culturally relevant for 3,000 years. You just never stop seeing stuff in Naples, and they're just so fun and quirky, and yeah, it's just a fun visit. And then you can jet off to the Amalfi Coast when you're tired of being in the city. So.
And we did that too. Sorrento, whoever had Sorrento in the background, that was one of my favorite places I had been years ago. So I love that. Thank you.
You're
Great to see all of you.
Oh, thanks for tuning in.
Kitchen looks beautiful.
Thanks, Paul. Paul's cooked.
Elaine,
Yeah.
don't forget to finish cooking those meatballs before
I know. I'm like ready to go. I'm gonna put because I have actually I'm eating dinner with my neighbors. Like I got to get them back in the sauce.
Get them back in there.
I will.
As Aunt Mary used to say, are they can they come out yet, or have you thrown them in yet? She's talking about the pasta. Of course.
Yeah, she was talking about the pasta. Right. We're nowhere near throwing them in.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, y'all. Thanks for tuning in,
Thanks,
everybody.
Elaine.
Ciao, grazie tante.
Bye. Prego.
Ciao, Elaine.
Bye.